So, everyone, welcome to Researcher's Desk, and a particularly big welcome to Tristan Mckenzie, who's promised to share with us his research on climate change and health. And you're at the University of Gothenburg, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
And since I've been thrown into this right about 5 minutes ago, I'm asking you to introduce yourself to give us some more background. And I shall now turn off my camera and I'll be in the background with everybody else. Welcome, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Monica. And thank you, everyone, for joining. I think I'm going to get the share screen set up first, just to make sure that is running. And then I can give myself an introduction. Let's see. Let's just minimize things so they're not in the way. All right, excellent. And can someone confirm that you are seeing a slide right now?
It's fine. It's on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today on Researcher's Desk to talk a bit about some of my research. I'm a researcher at the University of Gothenburg. I've been in Sweden for 3 years now. And most of my work actually focuses more on the intersection of water quality, pollution, and climate change. But a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to also collaborate on a project that talks about the intersection of climate change and health. Which is also an area that I'm actively interested in also continuing research on. So I will launch in here, I think. Let's get that. Yes. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about the results of our paper that came out a few years ago in Nature Climate Change, entitled "Over Half of Known Pathogenic Diseases Can Be Aggravated by Climate Change." Numerous previous studies have documented the impacts of climate change that it is having on disease on the local scale or for disease-specific studies, but no previous work has conducted a comprehensive literature review to fully understand the threat humanity is facing from climate-aggravated disease. And this is what we attempted to do in our study. So first, just a bit of background on climate change and how it's currently impacting our lives today. So the greenhouse effect, this is shown on the figure on the top left of the slide. Earth is warmed by the sun, and most of that solar radiation is then absorbed by Earth's surface. This is then radiated back from Earth's surface as infrared energy, where some of this is then absorbed by greenhouse gas molecules in the atmosphere. And greenhouse gases are important because they mediate the balance between solar radiation coming from the sun and outgoing infrared radiation from the reflection off of surfaces. Once greenhouse gases are in the atmosphere, their impacts are long-lasting. And so, for instance, carbon dioxide, which is the greenhouse gas we hear most frequently about, will remain in the atmosphere for 300 to 1,000 years, likely leading to lasting changes to many systems that operate on Earth, for instance, the water cycle, the carbon cycle, and many other cycles. Some of these effects we are already experiencing now. The plots on the right side of the slide show carbon dioxide in parts per million in the atmosphere. The top plot is showing concentration since 1960, when CO2 levels were really starting to accelerate following World War II. And the bottom plot shows CO2 concentrations over time from 40,000 years ago to the present. This graph is a few years old, but where you see this orange arrow, that shows where we are now. And we're actually beyond the y-axis of the graph now. Humans have never before lived in a world consistently beyond 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide, and that is where we are today. So the Intercontinental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, outlines 5 different emissions scenarios for the next 100 years. And in particular, I want to point your attention to the RCP 2.6 and 4.5, where human-induced warming by 2100 remains under 2 and 2.7 degrees, respectively. For a long time, this 2-degree benchmark was seen as a feasible goal, but one with also significant consequences. Now, even several years later, the best estimate for where we are headed is 2.7 degrees of warming, and that's assuming that the Paris Agreement holds. Both of these scenarios require substantial mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions, and it is also worth noting that many climate scientists believe that 4 to 5 degrees of warming by 2100 are likely. And the consequences of even 2 degrees of warming are severe. When most people think about climate change, they think about the weather, but climate change has a widespread influence on pretty much every aspect of life as we know it. So here I've pulled a figure from the IPCC report that shows the degree to which climate change has already contributed to physical, biological, and human systems on Earth. And outline systems indicate a minor contribution, and filled symbols indicate a major contribution from climate change. The bars next to each symbol show the level of confidence of each variable. And so, for instance, the polar regions have already witnessed major climate change impacts in pretty much every category with high confidence. This map represents the current situation, but one should expect that this story will become significantly worse should we continue to use fossil fuels as we are today. And these all impact then climatic hazards. And so here we have an outline, this is from Mora et al. In 2014, of the cumulative index of climatic hazards that's shown on the main map, and then various hazards, drought, fires, floods, heat waves, etc., that all result from the excess emissions of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The major takeaways I want you to get from this plot are that red indicates that there's an increase in the hazard, blue indicates there's a decrease in the hazard, and equatorial and polar regions are especially impacted. Additionally, looking at the impact of cumulative hazards is still relatively understudied. So in our work, we consider 10 different climatic hazards. As I mentioned before, greenhouse gases mediate the balance between solar radiation coming from the sun and this outgrowing infrared information from the reflection off of surfaces. And so this figure shows a simplified view of how the various climatic hazards we looked at in this paper can influence one another. Excess greenhouse gases in the atmosphere cause warming. Warming allows the air to hold more water, and that allows for evaporation to happen at a faster rate. This process then leads to excess drought in dry places, or heat waves can also occur when heat transfer from water evaporation no longer occurs. This then can lead to an increased opportunity for wildfires to occur. And accelerated water evaporation from warming also leads to increased precipitation, which, if it occurs over a short period of time, can lead to flooding. If we go to now the ocean climates, the oceans, warming enhanced evaporation of ocean water enhances the strength of storms. This can then lead to storm surges that impacts sea level and also flooding. And ocean biogeochemical and physical changes, such as warming, ocean acidification, or changes in oceanic currents, these all fall under ocean climate change. Finally, land cover change was included in this paper because of its impact on greenhouse gas emissions, and it has been shown to have an effect on disease transmission. So what you're probably getting now is that we have a very complicated system, and there's a lot of feedbacks within this system, which is one of the reasons that climate change is so complicated to study. And if we move now more towards the topic of our work, this is a result from Carlson et al. In 2022. Here is an example of the intersection of climate change, humanity, and vectors. And this is vectors for diseases. So Carlson et al., they developed a model looking at the intersection of vector-carrying pathogens, human population density, and environmental change. And from there, they developed a map showing projected hotspots of cross-species viral transmission, where viral sharing is represented by the axis in the red, human population density is in blue, and when the two intersect is in purple. The map here shows the projected intersection in 2070 under the RCP 2.6 scenario. Remember that this is the case where warming remains under 2 degrees with net zero emissions after 2050. And in this scenario, high-density population areas in equatorial Africa, southern China, India, and Southeast Asia are projected to overlap with the vector cross-species transmission in wildlife, which means we may increasingly raising our chances of also new diseases to develop or for humanity to intersect with vector-borne disease. So in our paper, we carried out 3 complementary literature searches following PRISMA guidelines for reviews. For our search, we specifically looked at empirical case examples where a specific climatic hazard had influenced a specific disease in a specific place and time. We used Google Scholar to find the papers. And for the first search, we searched disease and with each of the 10 climatic hazards. In the second search, we looked for each of the 10 climatic hazards and diseases in the Gideon and US CDC databases. that amounted to 375 diseases in all. And then for the final search, we wanted to confirm we didn't miss any diseases, and so we searched disease and pathogen name synonyms. We conducted a comprehensive review of the available literature, but also want to acknowledge that there may be a publication bias towards examples with negative consequences, or for also less rare diseases maybe not represented as well. We took extra measures in our search to account for these, such as documenting all examples of climatic hazards leading not only to aggravating disease, but also cases where there was no effect or the disease was diminished, to ensure we were accurately representing the available literature. And finally, our study demonstrates the linkage between climate change and disease, but we did not evaluate the impact that climatic hazards have on the frequency, severity, or prevalence of specific diseases. So what did we find? Here I show a simplified version of our online interactive database. You can access that following the link on the bottom of the slide. I'll pop it up again at the end, so no worries. But this figure shows the numerous pathways that greenhouse gas-driven climatic hazards via a variety of transmission types aggravate human diseases. Line thickness is proportional to the number of diseases impacted, and the numbers indicate the number of diseases. Each column is in the order of decreasing number of impacted diseases. So just reading off the top, we can see that warming was associated with aggravating the greatest number of diseases, that is 160 diseases. Vector-borne transmission was the most common transmission pathway, responsible for aggravating 103 diseases. And viral diseases were the most aggravated, amounting to 76 diseases. So if we break this down further, we found that 58%, that is 218 out of 375 diseases impacting humans, are aggravated by climate change. Of the documented cases of diseases influenced by climate change, 78% were exclusively aggravated, with only 3% exclusively diminished by climate change. In addition, we found over 1,000 pathways for climatic hazard-driven disease transmission. And again, vector-borne transmission aggravated the greatest number of diseases, and warming, precipitation, and flooding led to the increase in the most diseases. In the next slides, I'm going to present some case examples from each of the 10 climatic hazards we looked at in the study, just to give an example of the breadth and diversity of pathways. So our first climatic hazard is drought. And for this example, I chose cholera. I present here now a case example from Charlene et al. In 2021. This was an example looking at records from India, in Chennai, where they found that cholera had a dual relationship to water extremes. So both drought and flooding led to increased cases of cholera. Basically, that under dry conditions or exceptionally dry conditions such as drought, there's often a concentrated, an excess concentration of the bacteria that cause cholera, meaning that when you have limited drinking water sources, there's less dilution of the cholera bacteria, leading to increased cases. Flooding, if we look at flooding now, and this is now the same example, cholera, during flooding section, or during periods of flooding in the same region, person-to-person transmission was increased of cholera. And this was amplified by excessive rainfall, especially flooding and crowding, which can then also impact overall sanitation. And so then again, in this other extreme case, in this other extreme climatic situation, we have again an increase in bacterial transmission of cholera. To provide another example for flooding, leptospirosis. This is an example from Fiji in 2012. And here they were able to observe two separate outbreaks linked to of leptospirosis following 2 periods of extreme flooding, where they found that 83% of the cases occurred within 6 weeks of the flooding, due to the increased exposure to the contaminated water. If we look at another example or another hazard, if we look at wildfires, here's an example from Malaysia with Nipah virus. So wildfires, which of course are also aggravated by deforestation and drought, can cause fruit bat populations, which are the primary host for Nipah virus, to come into closer proximity to human settlements and farms. And this was a documented cause for an epidemic of Nipah virus to occur in Malaysia. And Nipah virus carries a 40 to 75% mortality rate. It's quite a severe virus if humans come down with it. And this is an example of how this combination of land use change, drought, and heat that lead to the wildfires can bring this risk closer or become a more probable interaction with humans. Heat waves. Heat waves now, looking at an example here is primary amoebic menincephaleitis, or PAM, otherwise known as the brain-eating amoeba. And you might notice that I also tried to find, or the examples that I'm showing today, I tried to find a variety of types of transmission pathways, types of causes. So the amoeba, as opposed to a virus or bacterial pathway. And in this example, this is a freshwater amoeba. And in Australia, they found that most of the occurrences of PAM have been linked to heat waves. And this is because atmospheric warming and heat waves are then associated with a longer duration and proliferation of this amoeba, not only in Australia, but also in the southern US and other regions where this amoeba live. PAM is still quite rare. It's not a common disease, but it has a very, very high mortality rate, around 98.5%. So quite serious. All right, now if we look at an example for natural cover change, here we have Lyme disease, and this was reforestation is an example of a case where natural cover change can lead to an increase in the tick distribution and also the proximity of humans that come to this. So when you do a reforestation project, these typically favor species that are adapted to living at this forest edge. So for instance, because it's not a mature forest, so white-tailed deer, for instance, these are one of the primary hosts for some species of tick, are then exploding because they have relatively few predators in an immature forest. And then this can lead to emergence of Lyme disease or other tick and pest or tick-borne diseases in new regions. And particularly also in reforestation projects, you're typically quite close to human settlements. So there's also this risk for increased human contact via that route as well. An ocean climate change example, gastroenteritis. This would be an example of an increase in water temperature and vibriosis outbreaks. And this example I thought was quite interesting. There was an outbreak of Vibrio infections on a cruise ship from passengers eating farmed oysters. And because the oysters are farmed, there's really well documentation of the water temperature in that farm. So they were able to determine that this outbreak occurred, or this outbreak occurred during the first summer where the mean water temperature exceeded 15 degrees Celsius. And of course, this makes sense because bacteria, of course, like warmer temperatures. But we're seeing a substantial increase in these types of cases due to the increase in ambient water temperatures. An example for precipitation, increased rainfall, especially that is driven by the El Nino, has led to an increase of sin nombre hantavirus host abundance, which is the host is the deer mouse. And this is a disease that's found a lot or found somewhat in the US. But because of this increase in precipitation, there's actually been documented increased cases in the hantavirus pulmonary syndrome in the Southwest US due to the increase of interactions between not only the host and pathogen, but also the host or humans and the host. Sea level rise example, malaria, of course, stagnant water, Plasmodium, which is the causative agent of malaria, thrives in stagnant, especially brackish water. And if you have cases along the coast where you now have increasing sea levels that also can cause pooling of especially brackish water along the coast in new regions, especially where the groundwater level is pushed up, you're increasing the area for that's available for Plasmodium to thrive. And an example here is that actually malaria has returned in abundance to Peru. And this is a place where malaria was almost eradicated 40 years ago. But in, I believe, 2016, they were registering over 64,000 cases. So quite a large uptick, where the increase of these stagnant brackish waters along the coast have been linked to the cause. And an example for storms, and in the study we included both, let's say maybe a classical storm, what you might think of, a lot of rain and wind or a lot of snow, but also dust storms are included under this. And dust storms are linked to increases in valley fever. These are caused by a soil fungus. And this is particularly bad in areas where soil has been disturbed for agriculture. So valley fever occurs primarily in the Southeast United States. But not only are the number of cases increasing, but also the range is spreading. And so that is looking like it might be increasingly something that needs to be looked for and treatments researched. If we look at an example for warming, and of course there's many, many examples for warming, but maybe one that's relevant to Sweden is Lyme disease and tick-borne encephalitis. So ticks are living longer and living in new places. So not only is their range expanding to higher latitudes and higher elevations because of warming, but also their life cycle is increasing. And that is because the overwinter survival rate of ticks is higher due to the warmer temperatures. And so basically, the net result is you have more ticks in more places. And that means that we have an increased chance then of a tick interacting with a human. I will say I pulled one off of myself yesterday that I didn't notice because I thought it was too late in the year. That was my mistake. So with more people intersecting with ticks, we will of course see an increase of these diseases. And that's already been documented for some regions in the world. Another example for warming, just because there's so many, looking at foodborne illness. And for example, foodborne illnesses caused by Salmonella, E. coli, etc. It has been found that there is a foodborne disease risk up to 6% per degree Celsius above whatever the baseline temperature threshold is. And this is an example from Canada, where the total Salmonella cases had a pretty significant increase with increasing temperature. So from these numerous studies that we read and documented and put in the database, we found 4 main mechanisms for climate pathogen interaction. The first being climate-related hazards bringing pathogens closer to people. The second being climate-related hazards bringing people closer to pathogens. The third, climate-related hazards enhancing pathogens. And the fourth, climate-related hazards weakening the body's ability to cope with pathogens. And now I'll talk a little bit about each of these, just so we have some context. So the first, climatic hazards bringing pathogens closer to people. So on the map here, and this is just for an example, we have the global distribution of the Aedes aegypti mosquito. This is one of the mosquito species that's most commonly linked to diseases such as dengue fever, Zika, chikungunya, yellow fever, and etc. Right here on this, we have this map shows the present duration of this mosquito by number of months for the world, right? So you can see quite a heavy population. These mosquitoes can survive year-round in the tropics, but obviously it gets a little too cold as you increase in latitude. However, if we exceed the Paris goals, and these are now model results, just to show an example. In 2080, you'll see that, okay, yes, this range has increased. We can't stop what has already been put into motion. If you recall what I said about the longevity of greenhouse gases or CO2, for instance, in the atmosphere, but it's not as bad as the business of usual scenario. And that's this one, where you can see if we continue as we are today, in 2080, most of the globe becomes a habitable place for this type of mosquito. And with that, that is introducing a new type of disease to new regions of the world, potentially. Climate disasters can also alter human behavior patterns, and that can increase their chances of being exposed to pathogens. And so this is a local example from the Baltic Sea. So during heat waves, for instance, people spend more time in water. That makes sense. But that can lead also to an increase in waterborne disease outbreaks. And so in 2014, there was a heat wave and sea surface temperature anomaly that led to an increase in Vibrio infections in both Sweden and Finland. In this, 86 locally contracted cases were documented. Most cases were actually cholera, and that was the cause of this was basically that the higher sea surface temperature meant that there were enhanced conditions for Vibrio growth, and the heat wave drove more people to the water. So this is an interesting case, I think, especially because people don't typically think of cholera in this region. But with warmer temperatures, it's certainly viable and something to look out for. The third pathway or mechanism, climatic hazards enhancing pathogens. And we found several examples of this, but actually what I've put on the slide is this, I don't know how to phrase it. There's some suspicion that actually fungal heat tolerance is increasing. And that is an interesting pathway if fungal pathogens can increase heat tolerance, because fever is actually our primary mechanism of stopping illness, right? And so what happens if the fungi or the other pathogens become more heat tolerant? That's may present some problems for us down the road. The fourth mechanism, climatic hazards weakening the body's ability to cope, primarily through two different routes. The first is forcing people into hazardous conditions following a climatic event. So for instance, this picture here is from Hurricane Katrina in the US. You can see lots of people, lots of tired people, often in crowded, unsanitary conditions. And also, this is often also occurring at the same time as there is a closure of infrastructure, clinics, and the availability of medical help. Additionally, Climatic hazards can cause stress, right? Which can increase cortisol production, reduce the immune response due to the increased stress or poor sleep quality, for instance. And this can overall reduce the human body's immune response. So I'm going to wrap up in a second. I want to flash up the link to the web tool again. We have the links to every paper on here, all the documented pathways. You can look at all the evidence, lots of case studies there. And then in conclusion, 58% of human diseases are aggravated by climate change, with over 1,000 pathways for disease or for climate hazard pathogen transmission. We found that atmospheric warming, rainfall, and flooding were associated with enhancing the most diseases. And the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is absolutely necessary given the magnitude of diseases impacted. Right now we are presenting what is probably a conservative estimate. This is what has been directly observed with a cause and effect. But certainly this situation will likely get worse with time and increased monitoring. Thank you.